Welcome everybody here for this discussion about the energy fields and the Bardo. It is the 12th of July 2024. I say that because the energy fields do change and they do shift, and the chakras do change and they do shift, and so this is the truth for the current moment. It's worth just having an awareness that a year from now you might look at this recording and go, well, this is actually different now. Don't have to worry about that tonight. Tonight we just have to worry about the current moment and where we've been. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, I'm just going to go through the energy fields and the chakras in case you don't know the location of them, because otherwise this conversation is going to be really challenging. Our energy fields have changed location and depth and quality since anybody did any lasting study on them. So the people who originally wrote about them were writing about them at least a century ago, and everybody since then, or most people since then, there's exceptions to the rule, but it's a general rule, most people refer to those teachings when they're teaching their people. And obviously we've evolved quite a lot since then. The example that the Guardians have been using this week they've been saying that when the fish evolved and walked out of the sea, there was some fish left behind who remained fish. And there was the fish that walked out. And obviously those two had different energy and different energy systems going on. So being that you are following the process of ascension, I'm going to assume that you want to be one of the fish that walks out of the sea, or one of the monkeys that walked upright, whichever analogy works for you. So we have evolved a lot in the last 100 years, but we've evolved a lot in the last 10 to 15 years. Things have changed and things have shifted. And the reason they're doing that is because the new space that the energy fields are in is going to start to support the new paradigm that we're going into. The post-ascension world and its opportunities and its things that it can teach us are going to be very, very different than the world we've been living in. So if you focus on the energy fields now, we have our first layer of our energy fields is about an inch above our body, and that follows the fingers, it follows the toes, it follows everything to the last little detail, and that's called our supra-physical, S-U-P-R-A, supra-physical. Now the supra-physical tells us about the physical well-being of your body. So if you've just broken your leg, there'll be a gap in your supra-physical energy field next to where it broke. A lot of the time, if you had a break that was significant early on, there'll still be a sort of energy scarring in your supra-physical that heals as we do healing on you, which then makes that part of the body able to heal fully. Now, above that, at the base, at the end of that supra-physical energy field, there is a very, very thin microscopic level of what we call the Bardo. Now, I'm going to come back to this because this is a pivotal concept of what we're looking at tonight. But just remember that there's that very, very thin layer there, separating out the supra-physical from the next level of energy, which is our joy plane. Okay, so if I hold my hand here and I go, take me to the top of my supra-physical on my hand, it's about there. And then I say, take my hand to the top of my joy plane. I go, okay, think sad thoughts, sad, sad. Take me to the top of my joy plane, and we go to about there. And I put my hand back on the top of the superphysical and I think happy thoughts. And I breathe happiness and joy and love and the celebration of life into my hand. And my joy plane finishes about there. Okay. So there's quite a difference in the depth of your joy plane depending on your current mind state. Right? Every space in the body means something. So if your knees are playing up, then it's about moving forward. If it's your arms, and it's about open to receive. Every part of your body tells us something. And which part of your joy plane, your joy energy field is expanded tells us where you're happy and where you're not. So you can read the person's energy by measuring how deep each energy field is. Okay. The same way as you can measure your own energy field by feeling into that depth. Then at the top of our joy plane, we have another layer of Bardo. So in between every energy field, there is another layer of Bardo. And it's very, very thin. Like if you weren't looking for it, you wouldn't even notice it was there. So just a microscopic little layer. Above that layer of Bardo, we go into the etheric energy field, which is our mental, emotional well-being. At the top of that energy field, we have another thin layer of Bardo. We go into the causal energy field. And at the top of that, we have another layer of Bardo, and then we go into soul plane. And then we have our life force field. Okay. Now, the life force field is the last thing to disintegrate before we die. So if you can see energy fields and you get into an elevator and nobody else has a life force field, get out, avert, run. You don't want to be in that lift with those people. So with all that in mind, with those levels in mind, and remembering that the guardians were trying to explain it to somebody this morning, and they were saying it's like the Russian nesting dolls, where the physical body is the smallest doll, and then there's a gap, and then there's a layer of wood. That's the next doll out, and that's the Bardo. And then there's a gap, that's the energy field, and then there's another layer of wood, that's the Bardo. The energy fields go around us concentrically all the way around our bodies, which I only mention because some people are looking at a two-dimensional picture and they think their energy fields only go out that way. It's a bubble. It goes all the way around you, right? Front, behind, up, down, it's all around you. Okay. So when we look at the energy field in that context, and we can see the health and well-being of a person based on the size of their energy field and whether or not it has any holes in it. There are some people who will push their energy field out to appear grander and bigger and more powerful than they are. That's just as unhealthy. There's some people who will try to hide themselves and they pull themselves in to be insignificant and disappear. That's just as unhealthy. It all tells us different things that we can do to support the person to come back into balance. Okay. So the next question is, how do we form like that? Because when we look at a baby, babies have a physical body, obviously, and they have a life force field, and there's not a lot going on in between those. There's still just a big bubble of soul, just this beautiful little ball of glowing yumminess, right? But there's no real energy fields. They're still pretty much in their soul bodies. Okay. So remember that, right? We go back to what is the Bardo. Okay. So the Bardo is the space that we exist in after life and before life. It is a layer of consciousness. It is a plane of existence. It is an energy space that supports us through the moment of transition. So immediately after death, we transition into the Bardo. And in this space, there are healers to help us to recover from any illnesses, from any discordant energy, any attacks. Anything that's gone wrong is helped with. And anything that's gone right is celebrated. Okay, that's the space of the Bardo. We are able to meet with past loved ones, take an account of events. We're able to meet with all our guardians, make a plan for the future, discuss the past. So the Bardo is a very healing space. And you can meditate and just travel to the Bardo and ask for healing, ask for direction. There are guardians in the Bardo who will support you. At the moment, before birth, just as we're about to incarnate, we're in the Bardo, waiting to come through, and we pull as much of that Bardo energy into our own energy as we can. We fill ourselves up with as much of it as possible. And so that as we incarnate and we come into the world and we draw our first breath, bringing the soul into the body and all of that energy into the body, we are surrounded with a protective coating of Bardo energy that keeps us safe and in that moment. Right? Now there's exceptions to the rule. There are some souls who choose to only come in for a short time and they don't come in with very much Bardo at all. There's reasons why people don't surround themselves with that energy, but in a healthy situation, in a normal situation, we have a healthy coating of that Bardo around our energy field. That coating creates the life force field, which is the outer layer of your energy field and the most sort of important to your life force. Okay. And so now you're just a ball of soul energy with a lovely life force field and a little physical body. And then over time, you start to become a little bit more aware of the world. And the Bardo energy starts to release some of the Bardo energy. So some stays in the life force field and some of it sifts down through the energy field. The first thing that the Bardo energy sifts out of our energy field is the joy plane. Because when we first feel that first energy field form, it is just pure joy, right? So that first level that forms is the joy plane. And by the joy plane forming, it automatically forms the superphysical, purely because the joy plane's sitting on top of it, right? So we get this joy plane energy. Now, that's changed since most of us were children, because the joy plane only came in 5 to 10 years ago. Anybody that was born before that, we had an astral plane, an astral energy field. That's now been replaced by the joy plane. So our first energy field probably was the etheric, which is the one that looks after the emotions and the mental well-being. Okay. Because having just an astral field would have been way too much for any soul to cope with. Whereas just a joy plane, fabulous. We can all do that. That's all good, right? So again, we know it's changed. So if we look at what's happening now, the Bardo will come down, form the joy plane, and then it'll sift down the etheric and form the etheric plane, and then it'll sift down the causal plane, leaving behind just the soul energy. Okay. When we look at children's development, you can see that that the younger children have less energy fields than the 8 and 9-year-olds. You can see that those energy fields haven't completely formed yet, that they're still finding their space. Okay. You know, from a healing ourselves point of view, that's important, because we know that a lot of the decisions that we made as young kids, we were making with only half our energy fields. You know, and after sort of been doing this work for 30 years now, and a lot of the time people come into me and they'll say, you know, oh, I made this terrible mistake when I was a kid, and I did this horrible thing. And there's a sort of gentle reminder of reminding the person that, you know, we don't have our full brain grown until we're 25. We don't have our full energy fields grown to at least 9, probably 10. So expecting yourself to make full and healthy decisions with the full capability of an adult is asking a lot. It's asking a bit too much. So with that in mind, you know, you can forgive yourself for an awful lot. For all the stuff that happened in the younger years, you've got to cut yourself a little bit of slack. Because you didn't have all the tools that you have now to tell you that it was a mistake. Your perception of adults' choices and other people's choices around you would have been coming from a position of the purity and beauty of not having everything formed. There is a strength and a beauty that we are able to look at the world when we don't have all of these things fully in formation. It's not why we're here tonight, but it's worthy of thought. It's worthy of a moment of contemplation about your younger life and the way you perceive it. That maybe there's a small door there that's open to healing by having a recalibration and a rethink about the way you perceive things from back then. Maybe not, but it's worth a think. So with everything, with that in mind, so you know now that you've got your Bardo between and you've got your energy fields formed. We're not going to look at the energy fields inside the body because that just gets way too complicated. I'll come back to that another day. When we get sick, our energy fields get depleted. When we become terminally ill, the Bardo energy is the thing that starts to crumble. So if you're a healer and you're working with people who are terminally ill, the Bardo energy will start to dissolve, and you will see the energy of each energy field bleeding into one another. So their ability to tell the difference between past life, probably this life, but in the past, and the present, will slowly dissolve into their emotional body. They'll go back to a childlike state as their joy plane molds into their etheric. To learn to invoke the Bardo and to work with that energy is a very powerful healing ability. You can't extend life, but sometimes you can improve the quality. Sometimes you can improve the quality of those last few days, which is a lovely thing to be able to do. Again, a side note, but a worthy one. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about that, or are you all okay? What's Paul saying? Please relist the layers from the physical to the life force. Okay, so just to go over that again, we have our physical body, we have our supra-physical energy field, a layer of Bardo, then we have our joy plane energy field and a layer of Bardo, We have our etheric energy field, layer of Bardo, our causal energy field, layer of Bardo, soul plane, life force field. Most of the time, if you're looking at life force fields, you can almost see them above the house. You can almost see how many people are in the house by the number of life force fields. That used to be true. You used to be able to look at houses and go, that's how many people are in that house. But houses have got sort of taller and more pointy, and it's much harder to see now. But the theory is good. It gives you a vague idea of size. That's it. Right. Does anybody else have any other questions before I move on?
Have they got colours, Arniya?
Oh, good question, Miss D. We like you. Do they have colours? Traditionally, they would have said that the joy plane, the astral was red and the joy plane is pink. The etheric is yellow. The causal was orange and is now sort of that copper turquoise. You know, the turquoise you get on top of copper. And you know, those sorts of colors were appropriate. What I'm seeing as we go through this ascension journey is that there's flickers. So, you know, assuming that we're all healthy beings, those colors would have been true. But then you've got this soul over here who's got off-world lifetimes from this planet, and you've got this soul over here who's got predominantly unseen kingdom lifetimes, and this one who's got predominantly angelic, and this one who's got predominantly, you know, priestess, and everybody's so different at the moment that when I'm looking at them, we evolve. You know, we do an ascension shift, and everybody lifts, and suddenly everybody's energy field is very unique based on their soul journey and who they are as a soul. And there's a, you know, a flickering as everybody sort of goes, oh, this is what it means to me. This is what the journey means to me as a soul, to me as an individual. This is what it means. And then they log on for the next shift and everybody's calmed down back into being sort of, oh, I'm just an ordinary little human. And then we go through another shift and we evolve up and everybody goes, oh, I'm an individual soul. So it's not quite as simple as it used to be. And I think you may find that over the next few years there's not as much of a uniform to the colors, which is another reason. Like if you are a healer, which, you know, I know you are, and they've got a few in the room, that it's really a good idea for you to get to the point where you have a mastery of understanding the vibration of the etheric and the vibration of the causal plane and the vibration of the joy plane. Because then as you're working with people, it doesn't matter what color they are. You can invoke the energy because you know that energy. Not just, oh yeah, I know it, but you know it in your being, what it's meant to feel like when it's healthy. And then you can invoke it for that person more clearly. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense because I'm not seeing colors anymore. And that's why I've been confused.
Yeah. We've
that makes great sense.
Transcended them.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Yep, that makes sense.
Just explaining that sometimes I will refer to an energy field as being a plane, and sometimes I'll explain it as being a force field. So I'm just going to explain why. The plane is the place that you go to when you're journeying into that energy field. So every energy field has a plane of consciousness that you can journey into and walk around like the physical. Okay? So if you have your joy energy field, your joy field, you then visualize yourself coming up through the superphysical and going into the joy plane. You're literally going into your energy field, your joy energy field, and then you're in the joy plane. So the two sort of become a bit interchangeable, right? Which is a bit tricky. If you then lift it up further and you walked into your etheric energy field, you would then be able to walk on the etheric plane. Now, the advantage of that is that each one of these planes of experience allow you to do different things. So if you wanted to manifest something, it's going to be different for you to manifest if you went to the joy plane than if you tried to manifest here on the physical. Right? If you wanted to do manifestation here on the physical, maybe you'd do a vision board or a manifestation list, a wish list. There's a whole lot of things we can do to manifest here. We can make candles, we can do all sorts of things on the physical. But if you go to the joy plane and you focus on the sheer joy and yum of having that thing in your hand that you're trying to bring into your life, then the power of that yum is going to echo out into the world. So the joy plane and the physical plane, they sort of coexist. So when you're sending energy out across the joy plane to manifest what it is that you want to come into your life, it is rippling out into the physical world as well. But if you do this in the physical world, it doesn't have the same traveling ability. It doesn't have the same quality of purity. Right? When we try to do that in the physical, it's very easy for the energy of greed or lack, poverty, all that stuff to come in. If you're truly in the joy plane, your soul has lifted itself out of that matrix. To go to the joy plane, you have to leave behind all of that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you find that you just constantly drop back down. Right? So the shift we did this morning of taking you to the joy plane, the Ascension Guardians literally stopped you from doing that. They pushed you up into the joy plane and they made sure that you held space there so that you felt what it felt like. Right? So if you listen back to that shift, you'll hear me saying, focus on your feet, feel the ground beneath your feet. And having to say it 2 or 3 times, as everybody who wanted to be in the poverty consciousness or who was struggling with it tried to drop back down to the physical realm. And the Guardian's like, no, up you come. They're going, oh, no, I'm not worthy. No, up you come. And they just kept pushing us back up until finally everybody was able to stay in the joy plane. Okay. Once you've been there and you've felt it, and you know in your heart what that feels like, it's much easier for you to hold it. You library the sensation of being on the joy plane. You put that into your little memory library of, oh, that's what that feels like. Right? So anytime I say to you to library it, I'm meaning take a photograph of the vibration, store it away in your mind, put it in your mind library for another day when you need to remember what that felt like. If we go to the joy plane, we can send that vibration out and receive it with love and with joy and with honor and respect. We can breathe it into our hearts, right? And the moment we do that and we show honor for what we're receiving, it makes it easier for the universe to bring it into the physical. It's like opening the door. Does that make sense? Okay. If we travel to the etheric, it's much easier to deal with emotional stuff because we can see the truth of it. If you've got emotional baggage, if you've got mental hang-ups, you go into the etheric and suddenly Everything's there, warts and all, and there ain't no hiding from it, no matter how hard you try. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes you need to have a good night's sleep before you try that. If you're trying to do past life work, then again, we go into the causal plane, and all of our records are there. All of the guardians who can help you with past life work is there. Okay. Now, the causal plane and the etheric plane have both recently been upgraded. The causal plane was orange. It's now the turquoise green. And we have evolved up. It's not that the causal plane has evolved, they have completely replaced it. The old causal plane exists as a lower dimension now, as a lower plane of consciousness. We have now got a higher plane with new guardians. So the past life work is changing as well. We will go into a stage where doing past life regression to go back into a life that probably was in the old paradigm won't serve us. We're in this delicate balance, this weird space where because time isn't linear, right? So your past lives could be in the future and your future lives could be in the past, which is just a in itself, right? Now they can't show us the future lives because it's past the ascension point and our brains can't comprehend it. So if your past life is a future life, there's no point in delving into it yet, because there's too many points that we're not going to be able to perceive as a reality. For most people, there's probably exceptions to that rule, but as a general rule, most people can't comprehend where we're heading. Okay. There's no point in trying to clear the issues from past lives that are in the past, because the paradigms are no longer relevant and we're leaving that world behind. So unless your past life is in the present, which would be weird, there's very little to be gained from going back and delving into it at the moment. 10 years from now, we will have gone through enough of the ascension process that maybe it'll become relevant again. But at the moment, we've got this fabulous gift that because it's not relevant in the same way, you can clear past life stuff like that. It's so fast of just literally recognizing, oh, I've got a past life hang up with that. I surrender, I let go, I surrender, I let go, I surrender, it's gone. The past life issues are so much easier to heal at the moment, so much easier to clear, because they don't have the hooks of relevancy. They're not, we're in that middle ground. We're no longer in that camp, and we're not yet in that camp. And so we've got this fabulous situation where, because it's not relevant, it's easy to clear. Right? To my mind, I'm making hay while the sun shines. Anything that comes up to me, if that's a past life thing, off it goes, off it goes, off it goes. Okay, it's done. Cool, done. I'm trying to clear as much as possible for myself, because my mind make hay while the sun shines. Right.
And I guess you've got experience in the causal plane, so you can recognize what was a past life. What does that, how do you describe that to someone who has no idea what the causal plane looks like?
Well, funny you should ask, because we could probably hedge a bet.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but you never know where we're going to go for the shifts, right? I never know where we're going to go for the shifts.
Yeah.
But, they did the joy plane this morning.
Right.
They did the etheric this afternoon.
Ah, bugger, I missed that.
One could probably guess that there's a high likelihood that the one this evening will probably be the causal plane.
Okay.
Right? If not, one soon, I would suspect, would be the causal plane. So I think that by the time you've done that, you should at least have a starting gate.
Oh, awesome.
You should at least.
I missed the mental and emotional playing today. It's so me.
So what I did at the end of the joy plane was, after the shift, I then took you to the joy plane for you to learn how to go into that space. I'm hoping they let us do that for the causal plane as well. Okay. That doesn't mean that you will have access to your Akashic records, because that takes a lot of training. That there's a lot of initiations that go on with being able to see all of the Akashic records, and I don't recommend it. It's a hellish soul training. They will, however, sometimes let you see some of the relevant documents. My guardians tend to refer to it as you can't see the Akashic records, but they'll give you the Reader's Digest edition. the relevant abridged. Enough for you to clear stuff, right? But not enough for you to get screwed up by seeing information that you don't need to see. Okay. So unless you're planning on doing past life works as a healer, then that training that the guardians give you to get into the Akashic records is really intense, and it comes with an awful lot of school of hard knocks. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend it at this point. But to clear your own, they'll give you enough information. You just have to surrender quickly. Don't get attached. Don't get too caught up in I was this and I did this and this happened to me. It's like, okay, I see it, I clear it, I see it, I clear it. And then let it go. Forget it. It doesn't matter. Okay. The wisdom from past lives will integrate back into your soul. You know, you don't want to get caught up in the details.
So is the change what was into that, just feeling it, knowing it, that the stuff, whatever's coming up at the moment, is just surrender into it and let it go wherever it's coming from, that it's all open at the minute? That's how I feel, that everything's open, and so there's no point in really getting into the details of it. But if it's coming up in my life right now, it doesn't matter where it's coming from. If I don't know where it's coming from, it might be from something else, somewhere else, past, present, future, wherever the hell. But it can be cleared now. And so is the best place to clear it through just surrender and feeling joy playing stuff, or just allow the process, just feel whatever the heck is happening?
Yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question, because there isn't a right place to heal everything, right?
Yeah.
So you could trust intuition to take you to whichever energy field was appropriate, but if you feel like it's a block that, you know, past life blocks always feel a little bit like they have no reason, because you look back over your life and you go, I have no idea where that came from. Or, you know, well, it came from this event, but I know that I felt this energy before that. At that point, then yes, I would go to the causal plane first. Right? And this is the thing, is when you start doing this work for yourself, you know, it may be that you surrender a few hours to it, but you may go to the causal plane, clear the past life, clear the root cause. You might then drop down into the etheric and clear the emotional hurt and the mind traps that have been made because of having that. And then you might drop down into the joy plane afterwards and go, right, I'm all right now. Let's manifest some stuff to fill in the gaps. Let's bring in some joy, baby, because I'm okay now. So let's top ourselves up. Let's make this happen. So it's not as simple as just go here and just do this. right? And sometimes you have to say to your guardians, or if you're working, if you're doing this work with me, then the VU guardians, right, take me to the level that I need to go to, right? And that, indeed, that's probably the one time that the color helps. That's, back to your color question. That's probably the one time that the color helps, is because when you say to them, take me to the place that works, and suddenly all the light around you goes that sort of turquoise green, you go, oh, I'm in the causal. I know where I am now, right? So it triggers a knowledge of where you are. Oh, everything's that warm yellow. I'm obviously in the etheric. Everything's pink. I'm in the joy plane. So when you first arrive in an energy, in a plane of expression, you often, it will seem sort of almost sort of overwhelmingly misty. I always think of, I don't know if you remember that scene in Harry Potter where he ends up on the train station with Dumbledore. For me, a lot of the time I end up on one of the planes of expression. It's a lot like that scene where it's just like white clouds everywhere and then they clear and, you're suddenly in this sort of random place. It often is the same for me as I appear into the, pink cloud or the orange cloud or the turquoise or wherever it is that I am. And I go, oh, I'm in that plane. And then the first place I arrive will be somewhere really random, like a town square, or there'll be a fountain and a bunch of buildings, or the temple steps, or a forest. And it's almost like that space in that plane is just for people to arrive. And then the moment I'm there and I feel my feet and I recognize where I am and I know where I am, I know what plane I am, then I can walk forward and go and find the information I need to. But it's sort of important to recognize that there are ascended beings living in this space. So there are little homes, there are little temples, there are libraries. There is everything that you would expect to have in the physical realm because it's their physical realm. Right? I'm not suggesting that you go to the causal plane and have lunch. Right? Because that's their food and you don't have money there. So it's not used in that way. But if you went for a look around, you would see everything that you would expect to see in a town or in a village or in a city. Right? They are proper, fully developed realities. They're not just an empty desert with one little book just sitting there for you. Right? There's a whole wealth of experience there.
Hang on. Hang on. So that's not my joy plane. It's the joy plane.
Huh?
So it's not my joy plane. It's the joy plane.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's connected to me, and that's where the interconnectedness is.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Therefore, is that why there's a layer of Bardo between each body? Because within each plane, there's a version of our soul living in that physical plane. Makes sense. Yep. Thank you.
When you're in the physical plane, your physical body is in the middle. If you go to the causal plane, your causal body is in the middle with the other energy fields out from it. Not the physical, obviously, because we haven't got there yet. I really hope we do, but we're not there yet. So your other energy fields go on the outside. When you're in the etheric, your etheric body is in the middle, and your other energy fields are outside. Okay? There seems to be a vibration there that is for each individual. But if I said to you, okay, I will meet you on the causal plane, technically speaking, I could meet you on the causal plane and show you around, like in our dream state or something. I wouldn't, because it's a very private space for me, but we could technically meet on the other planes. The same as we used to be able to meet on the astral plane, you could now meet on the joy plane. You can meet other people on the soul plane. Does that start to make sense?
Yeah. And is there a reason why you might have a larger resonance with one?
Because that's the one that's most important to your soul work.
Okay.
You know, so, and it could be that that's most important to your soul work right now, and it might change.
Can I ask a question around, do you feel that we go through various planes within the dream space, or is it one particular plane of reality?
I think that depends a lot on the soul. Technically speaking, you can go a lot of different places in your dreamscape. You can go to any of the energy fields. I mean, the VU exists on soul plane, so obviously that's possible for you to travel to at night. You could go to other dimensions. You can soul travel back to planets where you've had other lifetimes. So a lot of things are possible when we dream. It's just that not every soul wants to do that. So
we could be going through all the planes of reality within the dream space.
Yeah. But, you know, this is why for myself, I think it's really important that before you go to bed, you set an intention that you ask your guardians to clear your mindscape of your daily life, that you ask them to clear any musical scores or imagery that you have been exposed to during the day. Because otherwise, you know, that's when I have times when I am stupid and I watch something late before I go to bed and then I forget to clear. And say I've been watching Downton Abbey, and then I go to some spiritual class in my dream time that I'm meant to be learning about healing, and suddenly everybody's dressed like Downton Abbey and talking in English accents. It completely destroys what I'm meant to be learning, because all I can hear is the Downton Abbey thing. So before I go to sleep, I try my very best to clear any of that kind of influence that I've had during my day, because the power of imagery and words and smells and things that we have absorbed during our day that has nothing to do with the work we want to do in our dream time. And then I like to set an intention. So before I go to sleep, I will say, please take me here so I can learn about XYZ, you know.
And then when you're in the dream space, are you lucid a lot of the time?
Yeah. So a lot of the time with this is off track, but it's interesting. So let's go down the rabbit hole. What I do is I have in my dreamscape, I have a quartz crystal. And before I wake up, I will hold the quartz crystal in my dreamscape and I will put the dream energy or what I've been doing that night into that crystal. And I can plant it into the ground where the dream ended. And then when I go to sleep at night, before I go to sleep, I see myself picking that crystal up and I can pick the dream up where I left off.
Oh, you see yourself before you go to sleep, you see yourself picking it up?
So for example, during the first lockdown, I had a dream where my wolf totem came in and challenged me, and there was a whole lot of drama with my wolf totem. And I eventually got my point across, and I spent the night running with the pack across the desert, running with the pack of wolves that are my sisters. At the end of that dream, I didn't want to let go. I wanted to have more time with them. So as they curled up at the end of the dream to go to sleep in their den, I was lucid enough that I was able to visualize holding my crystal in the dream. And I put the energy of that run with the wolves into the crystal. and I planted it into the dirt at the front of the den, and then woke up. That night when I went to bed and I lay down, put my shielding up, cleared my mind, visualized myself picking up the crystal, holding it, and I was back in the den with the wolves as they were waking up.
Wow.
And then I spent all night running with them. And then, you know, some mornings I would program the crystal before I woke up. But if I woke up and I still felt like I was playing with them, then I could visualize myself awake, like as an awake person, holding the crystal and asking the crystal to hold that space, planting it in the den with them, go about my day. And I did that for 46 days, every night.
Wow.
I just went and ran with my wolf sisters. And then I got to the point where I didn't really want to be awake. I wanted to be with them, and they said enough. I got told I wasn't allowed to play anymore.
Oh.
So,
Oh, they sent you home.
they did. They left me with Saint Germain actually, and made me study with him. But but I wasn't allowed to run anymore. And so sometimes I still go back and run with them.
That's when you took me.
Yeah, I took Katie one night.
And I was the wolf pup.
Every now and again, I go and hang out with my wolves, and they go, "How's pup?" It's very cute. Okay, so does that with the energy fields, does that make sense? Does anybody have any more questions about that? Does everybody feel like their questions have been answered?
Well, I've personally never heard of this Bardo concept ever before in my life. So it was,
So this
it's
is
new information.
something I've read, Billy. This is something that I've delved into myself. This is from doing healing with people and just knowing that there was something between the energy fields. Like you could feel it. You're not going to find it written anywhere else, I don't think, because this is just something that I've gone and poked a stick at. Okay.
It's quite well known, though, the name Bardo, isn't it? Like I've seen it referred to, like in ancient, in the Buddhist. I mean, it is known that that's where you go when you transition.
Yeah. So the concept of the Bardo being a space that you go to between lifetimes as well. No, it's just not known that it's what holds that space between the energy fields.
Right.
But if you journey into your energy fields and you go into that Bardo level, you'll recognize that it's the same vibration in the same space as if you chose to go to the Bardo and not through other means. So you can sort of cross-check it to make sure it is the same space. So any other questions before I go on to the shifts?
Just quickly about going back to dreams. When people used to say they went astral traveling,
yeah,
is that like the equivalent of that? Is it hanging out in the joy plane when you dream?
So the joy plane replaced the astral plane.
Yeah.
As we ascended up, and you can travel through the joy plane the same way as you do through the astral plane. In fact, most people who think they're astral traveling are now joy plane traveling. It's just that joy traveling sounds weird. So
I
love it. I want to joy travel.
Go on a joyride.
Go on a joyride, exactly.
We just haven't quite picked up the joyride concept.
I have a question with regards to the chakras and how they are impacting on these different planes or fields. Do they? Because they seem to connect.
Yeah.
But it seems also that you've really, to get into the joy plane, you have to, or into any of them, you have to go into your heart chakra, then go through your crown. I don't know, that's what I've experienced so far. But I mean, are there other ways to get into the fields by using the chakras? Are they connected?
Yes. I think my way of accessing all my energy fields is through my heart. And so because I've been leading you on these journeys, my automatic go-to is to tell you to go through the heart. But I do think it's different for each person. So, and different for each situation. Like if you were going to deal with an emotional issue and travel to the causal plane, and you knew that that emotional issue was stopping you talking, and that was the issue, then you would travel through your throat chakra, because that's going to take you into the part of the etheric that's relevant. Whereas if it was a sexual issue, you'd leave through your sacral. Right? So any one of those now links to any one of the energy fields. It used to not be like this. It used to be that there were specific energy fields that linked to specific chakras. But, you know, this upgrade that they did today, you can see that every chakra now links to every energy field. And I think it is purely so that we can travel to the relevant part of that dimension or that plane of experience when we have an issue to fix. So it's deepening the work. And now that you've made me think about it and scan it, I think also the planes of expression seem bigger, which is weird for me because they were kind of limitless before. But I'm not going to go down that thing that's going to mess up my brain, because my brain can't comprehend the fact that they're more unlimited than limitlessness.
Limitlessness. Unlimitedlessness.
Oh, that shift the other day when they wouldn't let that go. They kept wanting me to say limitlessness. Oh God, they came up with a word that wasn't a word, and they wouldn't let me let it go.
It was unlimitedlessness.
Unlimitedlessness. Yes.
Yeah.
I kept saying to them, that's not a word. And they kept saying to me, tough, that's the word you've got to use. And they're all going to think I'm nuts. No. Unlimitedness. Oh my God. Whole
That's
shift.
it, Paul. You got it. Yeah.
A whole shift. They kept making me use this word that wasn't a word. It's horrible. Anyway.
But it's a good word. We like it.
So, if you look at the fact that when if you could scan now, leaving your joy plane through different chakras, it takes you to a different place within the joy plane. It takes you to a different focus vibration within the joy plane. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sounds really good. What about the 3 chakras above the crown, if we enter through those?
How do you get there?
Okay, so
I seem to spend an awfully lot of time in those top 3.
Okay, so let's just see what happens if I go to that top one and I visualize myself. So see, here's the thing that screws with my head, is that technically speaking, if distance was right, then those 3 would exist in the one would exist in the joy plane. In fact, there's almost one of those 3 for each one of the energy fields. If they're actually holding logical space, which of course they don't. But that kind of messes with my head, because with them being outside of the body, because they exist on a different vibrational scope, they can hold same space and not interact. So my brain does sort of twitch a little when it goes down that pathway. But
when I started really trying to work that one out, it was like my unconscious, subconscious, and conscious and superconscious were all in the same place.
The only way I can explain it to you is, imagine if you could look at water and be in water, but be aware of it as a hydrogen and, the different molecules within water. It's a hydrogen and oxygen, H2O. Is that right?
Yep, bang on.
So if you were able to be in water, but only be aware of the different molecules within that separately from one another, our brains can't comprehend that yet. We can't get caught up in that kind of mind trip because our brains actually can't comprehend it. But if I go to those upper chakras and I travel to the joy plane, I'm actually going to the highest vibrational space within the joy plane available to us at this time. They may or may not let you go in there depending on your current state of mind. I suspect that if you haven't cleared your joy plane on every other chakra, I'm not sure that they will let you in to the energy fields through those higher chakras. So during the shift last night, they lifted the vibration of our Bardo to the level of the Bardo post-Ascension, or post this year of Ascension. So remembering that Ascension isn't going to be a lights on, lights off. This is the Ascension. The process we are going through now is step by step, increasing our vibration and lifting our vibration and changing and changing and changing. That is the evolution that we are calling Ascension. This is us slowly learning to be in the reality that we're trying to work towards. Now, there will be people who will choose to not embrace Ascension, and that's okay. Because again, it's that whole, some fish choose to stay in the sea and some fish choose to walk out, and fish are beautiful, so it's fine. That's their choice. That Bardo shift was a massive step in the direction of claiming Ascension. The only way I can explain it is if you think of it like a 5-story building, and in the reality that we've come from, the Bardo vibration that we had was the vibration of the ground floor. The Bardo energy that they've switched us up to is now on the first floor. Next year it might be the second floor. But every time they lift our Bardo experience, every time they increase the vibration of that space, the possibilities of where we can incarnate to change. So up until now, if we wanted to incarnate, we could incarnate to off-world lifetimes. There was several other worlds that we could incarnate to. Some of the unseen kingdom and Earth. That was where we were incarnating to. The Bardo shift opens up a whole lot of other scope of where we can now incarnate to next lifetime. We can now incarnate onto the angelic. We can incarnate into some of the unseen kingdoms who have much longer lifespans. They have learning that we haven't been able to reach yet, but now we'll be able to. So embracing that shift, especially embracing it consciously, has fundamentally changed what you're capable of doing as a soul after this life is finished. I suspect it will also change the libraries that you will be able to now access on a causal level and on an etheric level and on a joy plane level. We haven't got there yet. We haven't explored that yet, but I feel like there is a whole new raft of soul information that I'm now able to access that I couldn't access yesterday, because my Bardo energy is there to support it. The framework of the Bardo energy fields holds those energies in place, stable enough for me to reach that new height. Okay? So we have a whole lot of souls on the planet who have been in those spaces, who have had lifetimes as angelics or, you know, higher vibrational beings, who chose to de-ascend to be here at this moment, to represent their race or their energy on the planet at that moment. They chose to de-ascend to be here now with us. The fact that that shift last night worked and the humanity embraced it means that those souls are going to be able to reincarnate back into their higher vibrational space at the end of this lifetime. Which means you have a huge number of very powerful souls on the planet heaving a huge sigh of relief, because they risked a lot to be here. That energy of relief is going to let the tension off a little bit. We're going to see that sort of tension in society just calm down a little bit. It also means that the gap between the souls who are choosing to ascend and the souls that aren't is getting broader and less conflicting, less, you know, aggravation, that kind of energy between the two groups. We will see the two energies just, you know, not being quite as conflicting. Does that make sense?
What I'm not sure about is whether is it as a result of that shift, have all souls got that opportunity now of reincarnating into those higher realms?
Well, all the souls who chose to embrace it have that right. The difference between doing it consciously at the beginning, when the doors first open, mean that we did more than just open the doors to that possibility. We paved the road to it being an easier road. We took the complication out of the experience.
So were there some souls that choose not to embrace it?
Yes, those who aren't ascending,
Right.
who have chosen to take the other road, will have chosen to not embrace it. There's a few of them who think that they can choose to not ascend and to still embrace that road for later, but that's not going to work. They can't do both. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just to clear it up, there are different Bardos then, I guess. As in that when one transitions, you said that one could go to a Bardo of a higher vibration if one is going to incarnate into a higher.
If you go back to that analogy of the building,
yep,
it's the same Bardo. It's just you're existing on a higher vibration. The same for people in society who are vibrating at a low level as people existing on a higher level.
Right.
The difference is that when you're on the higher level of the Bardo, you have no awareness of the people on the lower vibration, and they have no awareness of you. It's the joy of a non-physical space. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the other difference that I think is probably going to happen is the scope of guardians that's available on that higher level of Bardo should be different as well, which should make it easier to work with higher vibrational masters, which is kind of exciting as well.
Oh, from this lifetime we can work with the
This,
high.
not yet, but I think like that's what it feels like. That's where I think they're heading, is that, you know, you will be able to request a guardian from that higher vibrational space.
It makes sense.
Which is exciting, especially, you know, for healing and the mystic arts and things like that. There's some guardians there that will be really helpful. So,
yippee doody.
So as the Bardo is lifted, then of course our connection to each of the energy fields also has to lift. It doesn't mean that the energy fields are going to change. It just means that our connection to them will be in the higher vibrational scope of that plane of expression. Not necessarily obviously the highest, because we've still got another few years of this journey, so there's always more. There's always a higher plane, and so it continues. Right, so if that's answered all the questions for you all, as I hope it has, you know, and you realize that by doing the shifts when the door first opens, then the energy is fresh and easier, and we can go and get a better quality of shift than we could if we just let it ride through, or if we did it an hour later. If I thought for a second that we could do it an hour later and get away with it, then there would be no such thing as a 6 a.m. shift. But there'd probably be no such thing as a 7 a.m. shift. But if we do it when the energy first comes through and it's fresh and clean, then we can get a lot more out of it and make a lot more progress as souls. So I hope that that answers all of your questions. I hope that your brains are feeling good and full. Have a nice, deep understanding.